I'm ready to just jump into it if you are.
Sure, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's been a little over 2 years. I'm trying to think when the last time you and I
Yeah, just about.
saw each other. I think you came out to one of the meets my junior year right after you graduated, but
Yeah, that one in New Hampshire.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess the first question is just how have you been doing and what are you up to right now?
Yeah, I've been doing all right. I'm still living at home in my kind of home area where I grew up, and I currently work for it's called Morning Ag Clips. It's like a agriculture news website. It's kind of based in my hometown. So I do some writing and editing work for them. So that's kind of the gist of what I do for now.
How long have you been doing that?
I started last September, so a
Okay.
little over a year.
Were you doing like some sort of I feel like I remember you saying you were like doing landscaping for a little while. Was that?
Yeah, I was. My dad does a landscaping business, so
Right.
I helped him in the summers most times.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to kind of kick things off here, it's been a while since I interviewed a cross country teammate or a running teammate from Gordon, at least. So I guess to start things off, kind of tell people how you got your start in running and anything that stands out to you from your career before you got to Gordon.
Well, let's see. I started running when I was 13. It was going into my eighth grade, and yeah, I guess I kind of got into it. I mean, I had done kind of youth sports growing up. I'd always done like baseball and soccer all through elementary school, but I was never really great at those. But my mom kind of always suggested, like, she kind of saw that I could run pretty well, so she kind of suggested I get into cross country or track. So I got started then, and I did it all through high school, and I was fortunate enough to be on a pretty successful high school team. We were like a smaller school, so kind of competing against small schools, but we did make it to the state meet 3 years in a row. So we had one guy who was like, he was a nationally ranked runner, so like he was always like way ahead of the rest of us. I was always one of the guys, kind of the middle of the pack guys, kind of supporting him, I guess. But we had a pretty strong team, so it kept me engaged and interested, kind of gave me a good activity all through high school, and a group of people that I was able to hang out with and kind of grow real close to through those years. So yeah.
Yeah. Were you doing cross country and track at this time, or was this just one or the other, or what?
I was doing both, yeah. Cross country fall and then track in spring.
And what events were you doing in track at this time?
I was doing usually like middle to distance. My specialty, I guess, was my favorite one was the 3200, but I would also do the mile, and every so often do like 800, or even our coach would sometimes have the distance runners do 4x400 relays, kind of just because didn't have enough people, or just because I guess. But
Yeah, I remember doing a couple of those at Gordon, I guess, because
yeah.
For similar reasons. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Was there ever any desire to venture out into the field events or try some sprinting or anything like that?
I did modified when I was on modified track. I did a high jump a little bit. That was the one field event that I was kind of interested in. But once I got to high school, I focused on just running. And I think one time in my whole high school career, my coach put me in a 4x100 relay. Just kind of one of those days where you needed somebody, and he just picked me, I guess. So that was my one sprinting venture in my time in track.
How did that go for you?
Oh, it was a blur. I just remember getting the baton and like just going as fast as I could.
Yeah, well, it always amazes me because it's technically the same sport, but you run a 100-meter race completely different to what we're used to in cross country or the distance events. You just
Yeah,
go all out as hard as you can. There's obviously no saving
yeah.
anything, so you've got to approach the race completely differently.
Right, right. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I guess that leads me into where I got to know you through Gordon. So I guess what's your coming to Gordon story, and how'd you hear about the college, and how big a role did running and cross country and track play in bringing you here?
When I was looking at colleges, I always knew I wanted to go to a Christian school, and the pastor of my church at the time, one of his kids went to Gordon many years ago, so I kind of had heard the name before, and after visiting visiting a couple other schools, I ended up deciding on Gordon. Being on the team, it was a really good thing for me. I know being I guess kind of a more kind of introverted, shyer person naturally, the team kind of gave me like an outlet, like a something to do, and people that I was able to meet and I guess and get to know well. So that was always a very good thing for me. Um, I guess in terms of competition and stuff, running was something that I enjoyed. I still enjoy. So I was glad I was able to. I wasn't quite ready to give it up after high school, so I was glad I was able to continue to grow that and be a part of the sport. And I guess the other big thing was my senior year when Coach had me be one of the captains. That was a big, I guess, helped me grow in being a leader, which it's not something that comes naturally to me. I don't necessarily seek that out. So that was a big way it stretched me. I was able to grow. And so that's something that I still things I've learned from that I still carry with me today. So I was very glad to be part of the team.
Yeah, that's your senior year at Gordon you're talking about, right?
Yes, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess if I'm doing the math right, I think my first year was Coach Weichert's second, and you're 2 years ahead of me. So you would have come in as a freshman under the previous coach. That's right. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Mm-hmm.
So how did you see the team, I guess, change through the transition when Coach Weichert came on board?
Well, my freshman year, I had joined for track season, so I didn't do cross country my freshman year, but in track it was kind of real, I guess, like a bit chaotic because I think the previous coach had kind of suddenly quit, I guess, so there was kind of a little bit of, I guess, turmoil in terms of who was going to do it and everything. So that was kind of it was just very disorganized for much of that year, and it was kind of like the like older, like seniors and juniors on the team kind of became the coaches and were kind of leading the team. So when Coach Weichert came in, that was a real steadying presence, and he brought more organization to the team. So and that just helped become just having a team be coherent unit it just goes a long way in helping performance and other things too. So it was definitely a good thing see him come in, establish how he wanted to run the team, and seeing people kind of slowly but surely buy into that. It was a real progression, especially year after year, the years that I was there.
Yeah, well, I've always enjoyed the running community for that reason. I feel like it's just such a great community group of people to have. And, I think that was especially true, from what I got to experience at Gordon. So I totally feel that and understand what you're saying there. Because I think by the time I came in, it was even more apparent that they started the grit motto that year and everything. So that was it made being a part of a team feel just that much more special, not just because, you enjoyed obviously what you were doing with running and athletics and everything, but being a part of that family,
Mhm.
and having that aspect of it as well.
Yeah, that was definitely a big difference from my high school team and Gordon team, just kind of that, central motto and yeah, like it being like a family, I guess, kind of that was a big difference and something I really appreciated with Gordon.
Well, I just kind of want to relive. I know we got to run together for a couple of years, so just relive some
Mhm.
of those memories. I know the team has. I mean, this is going to go up sometime early next week, I think. But
Okay.
as we're recording this, it's Friday night for us, so tomorrow is the regional meets. And I was just thinking back to the year we ran, it being below 30 degrees and probably the coldest meet that I've ever been a part of in my career. And
Yeah.
I was only an alternate that year. I think. Did you get to run that year? Were you part of
I
the seven?
I was, yeah, that the
Yeah.
one in Maine, at the golf
Right.
course in Maine. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Yeah. I know. I remember some people were dealing with injuries, but I think you got to run that day. So what was that experience like? Just running in such cold temperatures. Obviously, it's colder. Generally speaking, where we are in New England. But that day in
Mhm.
particular, it was obviously rough for us all just standing around and cheering you guys on. But what was
Mhm.
it like racing in those conditions?
Yeah, yeah, I think that was probably, one of, that was one of the colder races that I had ever been in. I I remember that, I'm a person I get cold pretty easily. So I was, just, trying to, before the race, trying to stay warm was real important. And especially, I guess, kind of right before when you're like, on the line and got to take off all the warm up. It's like, that was, just trying to stay warm. Uh, I guess, but once I got going, or, I guess you kind of like warm up and you're focused, in the race. I guess you still felt the cold, but it wasn't. I guess you kind of, forget about it a little bit. I remember the wind being a real factor that day. Kind of at certain parts, the wind would just kind of crash in on you. So that was bigger challenge of that particular race. But I do remember. Um, I guess I was pretty, despite those kind of colder conditions, I was kind of pleased with how I ran, mainly because that particular year I had been injured for probably like half of the year, so I didn't get to run that much, and that race was kind of I just felt I felt better, or not, I guess 100%, but I felt like that was the best race of the year. So I was, I walked away kind of feeling pleased about how that race went. So
Do you remember what your time was?
uh, not off the top of my head, no, I can't.
Yeah. I know.
No.
Sometimes it all blurs. I certainly
Mhm.
know that feeling. But
Mhm.
yeah. Do you prefer running in the warmer conditions or colder conditions like that?
Hmm.
I guess when you're talking about extremes, obviously.
Yeah, I guess I would have to go with colder temperatures. I think, but yeah, I guess I don't. The heat kind of affects me a bit more.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I've always the way I've seen it is like, you can only take off so much, like when it's cold outside, you can put another layer on, or,
right.
if you start to warm up during the run, you can strip a layer or two, or whatever's going to be best, for you and how you're feeling in those conditions. Whereas, in the heat, you know, you, you're just kind of stuck with where you are, and, you can try to pour water on yourself and cool down, or do whatever you can try to do. But I feel like, you've got much more control in the colder temperatures with how you want to approach it. So I've
Yeah,
I've, I've felt the same way.
that's kind of how I see it too. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I know you touched on this briefly, but you got to serve as a captain your senior year. Did coach approach you and ask if that was something that you'd be interested in doing? And how's that role come to be for your final year?
Yeah, it was in my junior year. I think, I don't know if he really like gave me a choice. I guess he was just kind of like, I see you being one of the captains next year, and kind of like, you're going to be one of them, kind of a deal. So, um, but he did, kind of the previous spring, he kind of, myself and the other captains or people who were going to be captains, he kind of had this whole, I guess, sort of like program. I guess we kind of, it's from some like book that kind of talked about leadership, and specifically in the role of being of like leadership on a sports team. So that was interesting and helpful as a preparation. I guess, what was the second part of your question? I guess.
Just like, well, I think you answered just like how you got to be put in that role. And I guess to follow up, again, you touched on this briefly, but you said it helped you grow and realize your potential as a leader. So just kind of talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, it was good. For me, I guess, like I said, it's not a natural position, something that I would, seek out. It helped me, I guess, get out of my shell a little bit, and kind of learn more about, I guess, kind of how to reach out and interact with different kinds of people as well. Kind of figuring out, how different people, kind of think and operate, kind of how best to lead each individual person, even though you're kind of leading like the group. But I mean, having, multiple captains kind of helped with that, because, people naturally just kind of relate with certain people better. And it helps me, I guess, as a believer, kind of start to think a bit more about and try to practice more, kind of what does, how, like, being a godly leader, kind of doing it in a way that's going to be pleasing to the Lord. So that was a good thing, for me to look into and try to put into practice. So,
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess you had another opportunity to do that in the spring, on the track side of things. And I remember, I was kind of in the mid distance field. That was kind of my specialty, running the 800 and the 1500. So we have a chance to do a couple of 1500s together. I think I know you were doing some 5Ks as well, and I feel like you even ran there was an indoor meet my freshman year. Did you run an 800?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. I get that was probably the shortest you ever went in college, probably, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember, I think it was Regis, my sophomore year, so your senior year, when you and Toro ran that 5K. And I think you guys were just kind of trading places, like swapping every lap, trying to push each other and
Yeah.
run that race together. And then I guess when you get into the final couple of laps, all bets are off, and you're going for the fastest time you can. But I remember there was a 4x4 to wrap up the day. It was like right after the 5,000, and I think Toro was slated to run in that event. And I think I remember being the second alternate. I think Coach maybe even had you as the first alternate, but I'm thinking, like, I'm the second alternate. There's no way I'm gonna end up running this race. And you guys just absolutely destroy this 5K, and both put in, I don't know if it was a PR or season PR or what, but I remember it being a great race for both of you. And then Coach just laughs, because he's like, well, now Toro's got to get ready for a 4x4. And I made the mistake of being right next to Coach as he said that, because he looks over at me and says, "Hey, Schneider, are you warm?" And I'm like, a little bit,
So,
yeah. So then of course he told me to go rip my warm-ups off, and I probably ran like a 64 or something, certainly not my best, because I had like 5 minutes advance notice. But that was a meet that definitely stood out to me. Your senior year, and I remember how well you were doing in the 5K. So that was exciting to see. How you and Toro approached that.
Yeah, I remember that race. That was my my PR in 5K. It's on the track, so that was, and yeah, I think I probably wouldn't have gotten it without, us, me and Toro kind of working together. So that was, I remember that race well. Mm.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, I think I know the answer to this because obviously I have the perspective as a runner myself, but how much do you have to change your mindset? Obviously, being kind of a distance specialist and being used to it in cross country, when it's, however many, sometimes we run the same circuit and same loop a couple times in a meet, but it's much more scenic, and you're going up and down hills and everything. Whereas you run that distance on a track and you're just going in circles. It's got to be, the physical aspect of it is obviously just as tough, but
Mhm.
mentally that's got to be pretty draining too. So how do you have to adjust when you're competing there?
Yeah, it is quite it's different, I guess, being on the track. You're just kind of, you're in the fishbowl, I guess, kind of everybody's kind of around you. But yeah, I think just, just kind of staying focused, kind of not trying to, think too far ahead, I guess, in terms of like a 5K, you're doing 12 and a half laps, not trying to think about how, or, I don't know, like you got, 10 laps left and trying to not think about, oh, there are 10 laps, that's still a lot. So trying to focus on just doing, one thing at a time. And then it eventually kind of gets to the point where you're down to like, the last four, three, and then like the final two laps, you're kind of like just kind of, it's able to um, loosen up a bit, I guess, and kind of just go for it. But I guess kind of staying focused so that you can manage your race properly on the track.
So you graduate at the end of that year,
Mhm.
and I think the New England, obviously it's tough to get to New England's for track in any event. I feel like the distance events are extremely tough. So I guess would conference have been, that would have been your last meet probably, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Do you remember, what kind of feeling you had that day, knowing that this was going to be your last race?
Yeah. I remember, I think it was a bit different. I know, with cross country, that's always, I've always enjoyed that, much more than track. So I remember at the regionals for cross country, just kind of the fact that knowing that, this was my last cross country race, that had a, real, that was a real detriment to me that day, that those kinds of things can, affect me mentally. And it definitely did that day. And I didn't run as well. So I think with the track conference, I was trying to just kind of be more um, easy about it, try to, not think about it too much, I guess. Um, so I guess kind of that was my, wanting to do well, but I guess trying to be a bit more relaxed. I guess that was my mindset going in, just wanting to finish out my career well. So, and I remember running, I think in the 5K, I ran pretty well. It wasn't a PR, but I was happy with how it went. I think after then, I kind of let the, I guess, kind of emotions kind of get to me. I remember I cried a little bit, which I wasn't expecting to happen, but I was just very, grateful that I was able to be on the team, have that experience and stuff. So it was a good day, I guess.
Yeah. Well, obviously, things have been pretty disruptive the last year and a half or so with the pandemic and everything. But I'm curious, have you kept up with running at all, just recreationally, since you graduated?
I have. I mean, I haven't done. I mean, I'm not running, very many miles. I guess I haven't done a race yet since I graduated, but I do still run, pretty frequently, a couple times a week, and I kind of mix it in with other types of exercise. So I'm kind of just running to stay fit, but I'll probably think about doing a race at some point in the future, just kind of see where I'm at, see what I can do, that kind of thing. But
Yeah, well, I've certainly been, since I graduated in 3.5 years, so it's been about a year since my cross country season wrapped up senior year, and obviously that was a little abbreviated and
right,
different
yeah.
because of COVID and everything. But I've been enjoying my time off. I haven't gotten out there as much as I probably should have or would like to have. So I'm definitely looking to get back into it. So I'm glad to hear what you've
Mhm.
kept up with it a little bit.
Yeah, it's good. I guess it's good. It's kind of an exercise that you can do. It's not, I guess you can do it by yourself. I guess it's, fairly easy to do. I guess you don't need a whole lot of equipment or anything. So I guess it's a good thing for me, at least.
Yeah, and of course, there's not the pressure of training for being part of a team or anything,
Mm,
races coming up or anything like that. So
right. Yeah. Mhm.
you can just kind of go at your own pace and do whatever you want to do, which I guess is
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah, definitely. Mhm.
Yeah, well, I guess we can shift over into uh academics here a little bit. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know you're a history guy. Was that your major?
It was, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So I'll tell you my biggest regret, or one of my biggest regrets in high school, just looking back at like how I've matured and everything, is not taking my history classes more seriously, because now that I've been in college and just kind of seeing how modern history has played out in recent years. I have such a greater appreciation now than I did when I was just a cynical like high school freshman or sophomore and everything. And just
Mhm.
such a greater appreciation for history and the need to learn it and appreciate it.
Mhm.
So I'm curious how you chose that as your major, and what you planned on and what you, I guess, continue to plan on doing with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess history was, I guess, kind of always my first love. I guess when it comes to like learning, ever since like I was little, I've always been very deeply fascinated by history, and I'm sure my parents have stories about that sort of thing. But um, so um, I had kind of going into Gordon, I was pretty like undecided. But after that first year, I kind of realized, kind of history was something that I, wanted to. It's, I guess, what I've always liked, what I've always been best at. So I kind of wanted to continue in history. And um, I guess, kind of coming out with a history degree, people always kind of tend to look down upon it as kind of like, oh, what can you do with that kind of thing. But um, with a history degree, you learn a lot of how to like how to write, how to research properly. So those are kind of important skills that can go into any field, even if you're not in a history specific field. So since then, I've kind of been finding myself in things just using kind of more using the skills that I learned as a history major, kind of working in, I guess, a communications related field for the past a little over a year now. So, and I guess kind of going forward, I'm still kind of figuring out, I guess, what I want to do, and I'm still, I guess, open to going into like a history specific field, whether it's like being a teacher or um, uh, you know national park or something like that. But I still just kind of using the skills you learn as a history major.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get too political here or anything, but obviously, no matter what you think of current events or recent history, it's undeniable that it's been a crazy last few years, and continues to be. I feel like every week, there's something new going on that's troubling to people, or just something that you would expect to read in The Onion or see on a Saturday Night Live skit or something, but,
Yeah.
but this is real life now, and that's where we are. So I'm just curious from a history major's perspective, do you look at what is unfolding in this era that we're living in, and do you look at it with a different perspective and think like 100 years from now or 200 years from now, when students are looking back on this time, what are they going to think of this whole era that we're living through?
Yeah, I guess I kind of do wonder sometimes how's it going to be written about in the future. I guess I think kind of a lot of what's been going on in recent years has kind of, I guess what you said, kind of shown the importance of, I guess, kind of knowing history, because there's a lot of people that like to, I guess, kind of bend it to serve some sort of purposes now, which I think some historians kind of refer to that as like ransacking the past for present day goals, I guess. So yeah, I guess it's important to know history for, I guess, kind of what it is, I guess, not what you want to make it to be, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I remember when I guess when Trump got elected, I was thinking to myself, like, this guy that I know as like a Celebrity Apprentice host and a businessman who has like no political experience whatsoever, like he is now in the same category as like Washington and Lincoln and Roosevelt, and it's just and then they start floating out like like Oprah considering a presidential run or something, and you think like celebrity politicians, I guess, maybe becoming the new norm here. People flirting. I guess Caitlyn Jenner just ran for governor of California, so it's
oh, that's right, yeah.
Crazy times that we're living in here. But I don't know. I guess it'd be interesting to look back on. I don't know how I feel kind of living through everything that we're going through right now, but it's and some people are going to have, people from our generation are going to have some pretty crazy stories to tell, I think. In the coming years. So yeah, well, I guess kind of to wrap things up here, I don't want to keep you too late tonight. I know that you're a pretty big baseball fan, and I've got my Phillies jacket on right
yes.
now. I know they haven't been super great in recent years. I think they now have the longest postseason drought in the entire National League. But I have a lot of family from New York. You're a big Yankees fan, right?
Yep. Yankees.
Yeah. So they've obviously they won a World Series. They've won a lot of World Series, but I'm thinking back to when we were kind of in grade school. I guess 2009, ironically, beating the Phillies there. And the Phillies kind of had that period where they were very good, constant threats for a few years, and then they've just kind of been irrelevant aside from a few players since then. Whereas your Yankees have kind of come back, and the whole scandal with the Astros, I think I'm curious to hear it from your perspective, because I hear a lot of Dodgers fans who say like that they should have won the championship that year, but the way I see it, how do we know that, because they're not just sign stealing or whatever during the World Series, right? They were doing it all year. So how do we know that your Yankees don't go in there and beat the Astros on merit, and then who knows what happens in the World Series, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what was your reaction to the Astros cheating scandal, and I guess, do you feel like they were adequately punished or not, and what's it like seeing them back in the World Series even a couple times since then?
Yeah, I was kind of pretty kind of disappointed, I guess, pretty like irked by it, I guess, like like the Yankees being like that close, and then to find out that they were cheating to beat them, I guess. So I was pretty perturbed, I guess, but yeah, and I guess kind of having, I guess I kind of would have liked them to see their World Series revoked, I guess. I don't know if that's too extreme, but that's kind of how I was kind of viewing it. And I mean, I just like going forward now, kind of, seeing them in the World Series this year. I'm just like, always, it's like bothers me, I guess. Like I don't really like them. So I always kind of hope they lose. And I was glad they did this past year, but just a few weeks ago. But yeah, I guess, I think they'll probably continue to pay for it over the next few years with just suspicion and rains of booze from fans or anything like that. They'll continue to, I guess, pay for it in certain ways, but I guess they've got to kind of move forward with that stain, I guess.
Yeah, well, I always felt, you can't really revoke the title. Obviously, you put an asterisk next to it and everything, but it's quite silly to me. Like you think of cycling and what happened with Lance Armstrong, and that's silly to me for a number of reasons, because he was far from the only one that was doing it, was on PEDs and everything. So then I feel like it just cancels out. It's like, well, who's the best? Wow, they're all they've all got that advantage. But to look back in the record books, and there is no Tour de France winner for this block of 7 straight years that he won it, because his titles were revoked. But I think, and even if they did do it that way, where it's like they gave it to the next rider, I think like 6 of his 7 Tour de France wins, like the second place guy was caught for doping as well. So obviously that the whole sport just kind of got stained by that scandal there. But it's like it's like how it is with Barry Bonds, I guess. Everybody knows that he was using steroids and everything, but you can't go back and rewrite the history books, because those home runs occurred not only for him, but it factors into a pitcher's ERA, and how would you rework if you revoked his home runs? How does that change the ripple effects of those statistics? Because baseball is such a statistical sport and game and everything. So if they had, I totally get the sentiment for wanting the World Series stripped or whatever, but from a logistical perspective, I don't know how practical that really is, because
that's a good point.
The season occurred and everything. But I've got to say, like, as if from a Phillies fan's perspective, as if I needed any more reason not to like the team, they go back in 19 and they lose the World Series and give a championship to the Nationals, who are a division rival of the Phillies. And then this year they go back and they lose to the Braves, so they give Braves the championship, another division rival of the Phillies. And we're sitting here, paying Bryce Harper $330 million or whatever, and still can't even get back to the postseason. So that's frustrating for me. But like, I guess the only sort of opponents you could line up to that the point where I would even have the slightest interest at all in rooting against Houston, or rooting for Houston, I guess, not really rooting for Houston, just rooting against my division rivals, because that is a conflict of interest there, and the one time that I would be okay with them winning to prevent that from happening, they blow it. So as if I needed a reason not to like them any more than what went through the scandal. But I've got to admit, like, it's been harder for me to follow, just because the Phillies haven't been as great in recent years. But I know the Yankees were in a tight race this year with Boston, and obviously there's a lot of history with the rivalry there. Do you look at the team now, and are you optimistic that if they make the right moves here and there, and put a quality season together, that they could win the World Series again in the near future?
Yeah, I think so. They got the talent, I think. I think they should just perhaps maybe try to just kind of work with what they have, I guess. Like the Yankees are like a big spending team, and I think sometimes they have the tendency to have like impulse buys where they get somebody just because they have the money to do so. And other teams like I think like the Rays in recent years are very strong because they kind of build, like they spend years and years kind of building up players and making a team instead of So I think that might serve them a bit better, even, instead of like making a, Insta dream team, I guess, kind of, work with what you have and see what you can do, I guess. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, like I said, half of my family, a lot of family on my dad's side is from New York. So, I growing up here, I kind of adopted the Philadelphia teams, but I certainly have a lot of family and people I know that are big Yankees fans. So I'm sure they've got to be excited as well, because I feel like you guys, do have a strong roster in New York. It's just kind of a matter of, finishing the season and finishing the job in the postseason,
Right. Yeah.
and putting that together and closing the deal.
Mhm.
Yeah. Are you a New York sports fan all throughout? I mean, obviously I know your Yankees connection, but do you follow the other teams in the area at all?
Um, although I guess they're not my favorite team, or well, I guess in hockey, it's not my most favorite sport, but I do follow the Buffalo Sabres a bit. And um, I guess I somehow ended up a Minnesota Vikings fan in football, but I guess being from New York, I am pretty partial to the Bills as well. So some
Yeah.
of the New York teams. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I know the Bills have been they've struggled for several years, and now just the last couple of years they've kind of found their stride and finally have a chance, it looks like, to make some noise. So that's got to be an
Mhm.
exciting time for that city. And the
Mhm.
Vikings, I feel like, they've come so close so many times, and they're either,
Mhm.
I feel like you either hear about them like almost pulling off this miraculous run or whatever, or they're just they can't catch a single break and they're awful and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
irrelevant. I feel like there's very little in between with them. So
Mhm.
yeah, but I guess you've got some good things to look forward to, and with the Bills right now. I know they just lost to the Jaguars, which was kind of a
Yeah, that
surprise
was
there, but
be a good wake up call for them, I think.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chandler, thank you so much again for joining me. And I know it's been a little while since we got a chance to catch
Yeah.
up, so I'm glad to hear that you're doing well. And thanks again. I've done enough of these now. You would think that we could, start one of these meetings without any technical gremlins popping up. But
Yeah.
thank you for bearing with me there. And
That's okay.
yeah, glad we were able to get all that sorted out. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'll let you get back to the rest of your evening, and hopefully we can catch up again soon. Maybe not wait 2 years this time to catch
Yeah,
up
yeah.
here. I don't know. I'm thinking about trying to make it up to a track meet. So I don't know
Oh, okay.
if you've got any plans here. Maybe we could some of the alums could get together and try to meet up and go to a race or something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's a good idea. Mhm.
yeah, maybe we can plan something like that.
Mhm.
All right. Well, like I said, thanks so much, and hopefully I'll talk to you soon. But enjoy the rest
Yeah,
of your
see
evening.
you.
All right.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too.